So for the first time in a very long time, ever since, Overwatch Competitive Season 3, which was the tank meta, we've been seeing a huge decline in DPS players, or at least we've been seeing a lot of DPS players saying that they are not going to be playing for the rest of this season. Now, why is that exactly? And why are so many DPS not really liking the way that the game's going right now? Well, today I'm going to be talking about that, and talking, yes, not just about, the meta, but about why it's not that fun for a lot of DPS players, and why in general they're going to be waiting for the next season or for the next balance patch. Now I'm going to be saying right here, a lot of people are probably just going to quit Season 10 of competitive and not play for that, but they will come back in the future. So I'm not saying that, these players are never going to play the game again and that they're quitting Overwatch forever. No, I'm just saying that they're probably going to be quitting Season 10 until there's some new changes or until the new season comes out. With that said though, guys, let's talk about some of the main problems for DPS mains right now. Now, the first problem I'm going to go over right here is one that I know a lot of people are going to, harass DPS mains for. But honestly, I think it's not really their fault for doing this. And that is that a lot of DPS players right now are kind of quitting because the heroes that have been very good for a long time are finally bad. And a lot of DPS players main these heroes that were extremely good. Some good examples are Genji, Tracer, McCree, Soldier, heroes that have been playable for almost every single season, now suddenly suck. And I know what you're probably thinking to yourself, hey, that's their own problem, metas will change, seasons will change, whatever. But I think a problem for the players is that they aren't really used to having to change up their heroes. And I know, again, you might be thinking, well, too bad for them. But I think the problem is that the game itself has prepared these players to expect to be able to play the same heroes almost forever. And that's just kind of how the game's been balanced. That's how the game's been working. And I'm going to say that it's not really their fault for being caught off guard by having the heroes that have been good for literally almost 2 years straight finally being not very good at all. And you can kind of see how people that have played the same heroes for 2 years straight might be kind of ticked about that and might, not want to play those heroes. Now, of course, again, it is up to them if they'll keep playing. Of course, it is up to them if they'll decide that this is too bad for their characters. But I think that is honestly one of the biggest problems we're having right now with a lot of DPS mains. They're quitting because they can't play the heroes that they've been playing for years. And overall, I think that situation just wasn't handled very well. I mean, they probably should have been balancing the characters more often to make certain DPS bad, certain DPS good. They probably shouldn't have made Tracer like the best DPS in the game for 2 years straight, because when they're finally not so great after that much time, people are just going to be really pissed off and immediately quit their hero. And it's not really the player's fault. I think it really is the developer's fault, because you're going to catch so many players off guard. And at a certain point, I feel like it's kind of too late to balance the game around certain characters. It's kind of too late to say, hey, this character's now bad after being great for so many seasons. And I think that's kind of where, it's been just lately with a lot of people playing again, Genji, Tracer, Soldier, all those different type of characters. Now, switching off from that, I also want to say right now that overall, I hear a lot of DPS mains kind of complaining that just playing right now is not way too fun. And I think that is a very general statement, and most people don't really understand what that even entails. And for a while, I couldn't really understand that either. I mean, the game's pretty much as it's always been. But what I think is so unfun about the meta right now for DPS mains is that it's so difficult to get kills. And honestly, it's just kind of a hassle to get kills. And of course, always getting kills has been difficult for every role. That's just kind of how the game works. But lately, there's just been so much armor with Brigitte added into the game, so much HP, and it's not that much fun to have to hit through 400 HP to kill a squishy hero. And I know that, as the squishy heroes that aren't dying anymore, that is really fun. You're playing all the time, you're living, you're doing whatever you want to. But as a person that, generally does just enough damage to kill somebody through their damage threshold, that doesn't always work anymore. And overall, I feel like the damage threshold of this game have kind of been broken by Brigitte, and maybe should be fixed a little bit. Especially Genji, I think, has been, hurt quite a bit from this, where his combo did just around 200 damage, but now he has to just hit a lot of shurikens beforehand before ever having the chance of getting a kill. Getting resets is way harder, and overall, it's just not that fun to play against that. And yes, a lot of DPS are still needed, but at the same time, the DPS that people like to play a lot aren't really needed. And I think a problem that we have right now is that a lot of these spam DPS are the best DPS right now. And that's fine. Again, whatever DPS that's currently in the meta will be in the meta. Meta's changed, all that well. But I feel like a problem is that Overwatch as a community just doesn't really like the spam heroes at all. They don't really like having Junkrat in the game, you know, being good at all. People have hated that and complained about that for months. People don't really like Pharaoh being that good because if you aren't playing hit scan, she feels kind of uncounterable, or playing Diva. But, you know, she's really good. People don't like playing... Hanzo's kind of debatable. Some people do, some people don't. But overall, a lot of the spammer-type DPS characters, people just don't like to play, and people don't like to grind a lot of time into. And right now, a lot of those characters are extremely good. And I know a lot of DPS players that personally, when they die to these characters, just kind of get pissed off. And when you have that happen to you every single game, when you're playing someone like McCree that you personally feel like takes a ton of time and a ton of effort to get good at, and you keep getting beat by somebody like a Junkrat who just keeps spamming towards your direction, that's not very fun for these players. And I think that's why a lot of people have just kind of been quitting competitive for people that have been playing the traditional, more hit-scan based DPS type characters. Overall, I think a lot of the players that are playing versus these other players are just thinking, you know, this takes no skill. I can't get better while aiming with these characters. It's just not very fun to play against them. It's way too easy to play as them, so I'm not going to pick them up myself. And I think it's just kind of been a downward spiral, honestly. Personally, for myself, I'm fine if the hit scan and the projectile are just as good as each other. I think the spam, while not that fun to play against, still should have a place in the meta, still should be available, and I know a decent amount of people like playing as Junkrat. But for people that don't have the same opinion as me, yeah, a lot of them I've just kind of given up. And this, even you could, I guess, say, go back to the Mercy meta where spam was really strong and the spam meta back then, but I think right now is just another thing very similar to the Mercy meta. That's kind of how the meta's been, but worse in some ways because, well, yes, you know, there aren't reses, which was super annoying. At least the reses just kind of undid your kills. Right now, you just can't kill stuff in the first place, so you don't even have the fun of killing people in the first place in a lot of situations. So, yeah, kind of debatable, but that's really my ideas on that. Now, I guess one of the final things I'm going to say here is that it's been kind of hard for DPS mains to get a real incentive to also play a lot right now with all these spammy type characters and with these really slow pushes and with these triple tank or triple support comps, because DPS just isn't that impressive to watch. Now, sometimes it is. Sometimes you'll see Widowmaker, but that's kind of it. You won't see much of anybody else in ladder. You won't see much of anybody else, especially in esports. And I think it's really hard for people to tell the difference between a good projectile type player and a great one. I think Jake is a really good example. Honestly, I think he does really well in the Houston Outlaws, but a lot of people meme on him for playing Junkrat a lot and for being really good at Junkrat because he's just such an easy character. That's kind of things people do, and I think by having no real characters for people to look up to right now and to want to become very good at, it's making a lot of people just kind of eventually getting bored of the game, and especially since a lot of the characters people have been grinding for years, again, aren't that good, and not that many people are playing those characters to show what that character can even do right now. Now, another thing I'm going to say right here is that there also is a sniper meta right now, which is fine if you are a sniper, but I think for almost all the other DPS characters, it's not that fun to play against them. There's little you can really do, and mainly what you have to do is hope that your shield tanks play really well, hope that you can play around corners well, and especially against Hanzo, none of the other DPS can do all that much right now. And the DPS that could do a lot, like, let's say, you know, Tracer or Genji by chance, because they're flankers, are being completely shut down by Brigida, and even if they get on the somebody, you know, let's say Hanzo or Widowmaker again, they can just get away now. They have a ton of mobility, and they also have armor and health. Overall, you can see, yeah, it's just a pain right now to play this role, and that's why, again, in a lot of my games, I think I'm to these characters. And I guess the final reason that I think is the big reason why people are quitting DPS for this season is that there is no real big incentive or reason to play DPS in a 2-year-old game where your hero kind of sucks. For most players, I think they're just going to wait until the next patch. They're going to wait until the next season. They're going to wait until the characters that they've been playing for a long time have been good. And honestly, I think that's fine. Sometimes I think it's all right to switch in and out of players. The player base is always going to swap around. I know for the past few months, tank players were essentially non-existent because tanks really sucked. Most of the time, you'd only have like one Winston, maybe a Winston Diva, and that was kind of it. And tank players kind of went MIA. You couldn't find them anywhere. Now it's kind of switching to DPS. I think the only big problem, I guess, is that there's a much bigger proportion of DPS players in the game than tank players. So when they go away, it's quite a bit easier to notice, and I think that has been, I guess, one of the biggest problems that's been showing up. Overall, these have been my own ideas about why so many DPS mains are quitting Overwatch competitive, at least for this season. And I guess some ways to fix this is to, A, nerf Brigida a little bit. I wanted to still be playable, but not so unfun to play against as she has just kind of been destroying the meta. Of course, as well, you know, they could implement a role queue to make so that people could pick DPS when they wanted to, so that you could always get the amount of DPS you need, all this other stuff, but, you know, whatever. That's a completely different topic. But with all that said, though, guys, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, make sure to leave a like. Comment down below if you're a DPS main, and if you're quitting in the season, or if you're continuing to play and continuing to enjoy it, and if you really like playing these characters that haven't been good almost ever. That being, you know, Junkrat, Pharah, and all those other characters. With that all said, though, guys, thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed. And as always, have a wonderful day.